Hi everyone, this is Alan Rosinski of Metro Manhattan Office Space. Good afternoon. I'd like to discuss how landlords are repricing their retail space in New York City 8 months after the pandemic. What has happened if you want to open up a store? What are you going to pay? You're going to get a real discount than you would have gotten 8 months ago. If you got a lease expiring, can you negotiate a greatly reduced rent? Well, what I found very, very curious about current conditions, whether it's retail space or office space, is how many landlords are still listing their properties at the pre-pandemic pricing. They either list at those numbers or they list their space at a negotiable number. Now, in the last few months, I have represented a high-end menswear showroom seeking a small space, about 1,000, 1,500 square feet, and a home furnishing company from out of state seeking anywhere from about 1,400 to 2,000 square feet. And doing my research, what I've noted is that the approach landlords are taking at the moment is to attempt to discount the first few years of a lease for ground floor space, make it very appealing for any potential tenant, and then to have what's called in the industry a bump, say after the first couple of years, or let's say it's a 5-year lease, a bump midway through the lease term. So you understand the concept and keep the math simple. Let's say the landlord is looking to have an average rent of $100 a square foot outside of the escalations through the entire 5-year lease term. They would achieve that if the first 2.5 years were $50 a square foot and the last 2.5 years were $150 a square foot. So they get an average number of $100 a square foot. And what a bump allows a landlord to do is to market a space at a very, very aggressive number and then average a particular number over the long term. So the approach of landlords generally has been, look, we understand the conditions are very tough now, that there's much less foot traffic in New York. A lot of people aren't at work, but people are going to be going back to work in another 6 months, a year or so. Conditions are going to improve. So we're going to give you a break for a couple of years. You can grow your business, and when conditions are better, there is going to be a bump. Now, what I think is questionable about this approach, and difficult both from the tenant and the landlord's point of view, is the unpredictability of future conditions. Nobody knows how long the pandemic is going to last. Is this going to be several years, another 6 months? Another uncertainty is whether some of these tenants are going to come back. So many of them have gone out of business that the vacancy rate is going to be very high, and being the pricing is driven by supply and demand, if there's going to be a very high level of supply of retail space, the retail rents could stay depressed for a long time. And it's tough to imagine what kind of industries are going to come in and lease retail space at anywhere near the numbers that were paid before. Because what's happened in the economy has been a fundamental structural shift. It's like the shift away from agriculture towards manufacturing. It's like the shift towards overseas manufacturing centers, say in Asia, which diminished the size of the manufacturing industry in the United States. Now, a lot of these small stores, they were kind of zombies. They were the Walking Dead. They could barely make a living. And now that they're out, I just don't see many of them coming back and leasing retail space, particularly when their competitor is Amazon, and it just makes a lot more sense to sell something online than it does to sell it in a store. Now, I think the sort of uses that you could have that'll go into retail is going to be a fair amount of medical space, maybe a fair amount of office space from tenants who are going to appreciate being able to stay on a ground floor, not having to take an elevator, not providing the rents fall enough. And I think there's a good chance that distribution centers will take a certain amount of the retail space because they'll be able to deliver much, much faster. Distribution center out in Jersey or Long Island City, they get your order. It may not be till the next day before it's delivered, but they get that order and they're already in Manhattan. You'll get your order in a couple of hours, and that's going to really push e-commerce forward. If you found this content interesting or helpful, I'd be happy if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can always find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Metro Manhattan. Until the next time.